of Australia's biggest employers is slashing a fifth of its workforce in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Qantas is taking the drastic action and is warning it will take years for the aviation sector to return to normal. SBS Finance editor Ricardo Gonçalves has been following the story closely and joins me now. Ricardo, just how many jobs are expected to go?
Janice, back in 2014, Qantas cut 5,000 jobs in a radical transformation program, but this is even larger. Qantas has 29,000 employees. 6,000 of them will go. That's about 20% of its workforce. 15,000 will continue to be temporarily stood down. That leaves just 8,000 expected to be working by the end of July. Flying into the coronavirus pandemic head on.
We've never experienced anything like this before.
For the second time in his 12-year tenure as CEO, Alan Joyce is leading a dramatic restructure of the airline. 2020 should have been a celebration of 100 years in operation. Instead, it will be marked by the exit of a significant chunk of its workforce. 6,000 jobs will go, most in head office and management and ground support. More than 1,000 cabin crew will become unemployed, along with 630 engineers and 220 pilots. Contractors, like those in IT, make up the rest.
We have to position ourselves for several years where revenue will be much lower, and that means becoming a smaller airline in the short term.
But union groups have slammed the move, calling it premature.
Mr Joyce knows full well that the federal government is in the process of reviewing the JobKeeper system.
If the government doesn't deal with the uncertainty of the cliff that is facing thousands of businesses, then the announcement of Qantas today is going to be repeated many times over.
The government says it's preparing further assistance for some of the hardest hit sectors.
We know that there needs to be targeted support. We're working on how that targeted support can be best delivered.
But Labor says it's too little, too late.
Business is making decisions now, this financial year, as to whether or not they are going to be able to keep people on.
The job cuts are part of a 3-year plan to save the airline $15 billion. It also includes a near $2 billion capital raising to get it through the next few years and the grounding of 100 planes for up to 12 months.
All airlines are in the middle of the biggest crisis our industry has ever faced.
That includes Virgin Australia, which collapsed under a $7 billion pile of debt.
Qantas are looking at their network and obviously preparing themselves to compete pretty ruthlessly with whatever emerges from the Virgin administration process.
A new owner for Virgin Australia should be revealed by Tuesday, along with the fate of its 10,000 workers.
So, Ricardo, what does this mean for travellers?
Well, it's going to take some time for things to return to normal. For domestic flights, CEO Alan Joyce says capacity should return to 70% by around this time next year and full capacity a year later. But international flights will take longer, with only 50% of seats in the skies at pre-COVID-19 levels by July next year and 66% the year after.
So, Ricardo, tell us, how have investors responded to this?
Well, Janice, Qantas shares went into a trading halt ahead of today's announcement of 6,000 job losses and its near $2 billion capital raising, so they weren't trading today. Looking back, Qantas took a beating like the rest of the market when the virus emerged, but it was one of the stocks that quickly bounced back because of a sooner than expected easing of restrictions across Australia.
But at the heart of this is still a health crisis. And as we see more COVID-19 cases come out of Melbourne, as well as some of the other states, not to mention some of the biggest economies in the world, like the US, Brazil and India, unfortunately, the view is getting dimmer in terms of the path to recovery.
And we certainly saw that across the travel sector on the share market today. Flight Centre, the worst performer on the 200, down 11%. Webjet and corporate travel management also saw some heavy falls.